Hello, people that how's it doing? So this is a bit of a change. We kind of will maybe do this once in a while. So we kind of have our own radio, I suppose, kind of a radio show here. So I want to get in touch on the changes in society. From when I was growing up, and for many people here listening now, and it's kind of giving away your ages, but the change in society is huge. Like I remember when I was growing up, and even when we were on the boat, I was always lived in Cavan, even on the border regions. You could play outside. You could go outside in the public road, in a very busy road. You wouldn't have anything to fear. You wouldn't be kidnapped or anything like that, or nothing will happen to you. Nowadays, you'd be very fearful of sending your children out, in the border area, or even in any part of Ireland. You'd be very fearful of sending your children out, because you never know who could come along nowadays. And it's just that thing. This is the change in society that people had a bit more decency, people had a bit more respect back years ago. And obviously the changes, like I even remember we used to leave our windows open, some windows open in our house at night time. And nowadays you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. And again, this is the change in society. Even with mass migration too. You see, even when I was growing up, there wasn't many people from other countries here. If that makes any sense. And it's a big change now in this country. The demographics are very changed and everything like that. And you see this, like back when I was even growing up about 10 years ago, there was no such thing really as really Indian takeaways and Chinese takeaways. Big changes there, big changes in them sectors. And obviously, the change in society, either it would be good or for bad. Still happens. Change is good, but if it's too much change, as we always say, it's not good to have too much change. It's good to have small amounts of change. Of course, change is as good as the West, as the old saying is. But, the change in society is very rapid. It's happening as we speak. Changes are happening across the world in our societies. In Ireland, as we see many changes across our country, across our counties, even across our villages and towns. We see changes. We see things happening that shouldn't be happening. We see things that are questionable, to say the very least. Like the millionaire in Dundalk wanting to buy 6 sites and claim it off, and not have them as sovereign Irish territory, but as Hong Kong territory. And again, this every part of this island, even the 6 counties up in Northern Ireland, are sovereign Irish territory, and never will be any other territory but sovereign Irish territory. Again, it's the change in society. Back years ago, back in the 60s, back in the 50s, this government, the Irish government, at least they were a bit more patriotic. Nowadays, we just have a pile of, don't know, Joe Biden's in the government. Back in the 50s and back in the 60s, the government were more patriotic. Government were more patriotic, government cared more about this country. You see it even in OT. OT used to have the national anthem playing before the news and during advertisements and everything like that. And that was very patriotic. And if OT will bring that back now. If we had this in this country. Because the thing, the changes too. We had an Irish flag. This is my point. We had an Irish flag at the top of our classroom in our national school. It was there when I was there in junior reference, senior reference, and first class. There was an Irish flag right beside the teacher's desk, there to represent that you were in the Irish state, and that you were basically you're in Ireland, and the rules of law and everything. The patriotism, learning to love your country and to learn to respect your flag, and that's something that's very important nowadays. To respect your flag and respect your country. And respect your history. Above all else, respect who sacrificed their lives and who died for that flag, and for that to be there, for that to stand. This goes all for granted nowadays. And back years ago, in the 50s and 60s, our parents would have knew what the people of 1916 and what the people before that, Wolftown, people sacrificed for an independent Irish state. Because it all led up to it. Even in the War of Independence, Michael Collins, all they sacrificed, everything they give up for us to be here now. And that's very important for a child to develop and to think about that and to learn about that. And we see this government now, in some national schools they won't even put up the tricolour, because some people think it's offensive. And again, I say you're in Ireland, and simple as that, and the national flag will fly where it's necessary to fly. Again, this is the change in society too. RT and the government have gone very anti-Irish, and that's really mainly saying that straight. Um, the government, as I mentioned there, if RT would play the national anthem again, they made a mess of the Andrews one night, which is if you don't know what the Andrews is, it's basically at 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock a day. The Andrews swings out. It's kind of like bells. They show advertisements on RT and things. They show people's crafts and things like that. That's very, it's very modest to see that. And it's very great to see that. But they showed a bunch of robots one night, and that's really what I describe it as. Very unusual kind of crack. And again, it's questionable. Back years ago, this country was very religious. And unfortunately, the change in society too now. And it's really down to the Catholic Church's own fault, really, too. I won't sit here and say that the church didn't do anything for it. The church really did. In this country, and I'm sure as many people would nearly point out as soon as I say this, many girls and many boys were sexually abused by priests. And some of them even are alive today and won't be charged because the state's in their pocket. And the state doesn't want anything to do with it. And these people won't be charged. These people won't be got. It's unfortunate that that this is the society we live in, that the government will pursue these people that abuse children at a young age, and scar them for life. And that's something that the clerical abuse in this country. It's you can't even find the words to describe how bad it was and how much it happened in this country. And and as I was saying in that video earlier on, the old saying back years ago was get up and get on with it. But yeah, you can't get up and get on with them men and them women were scoured and still scoured to this day. Some of them even had children because of the priests. And their children were taken away and put into a mother and baby home. Some of the children were just killed at the spot by the Catholic Church. But yeah, the Catholic Church didn't really ask, again with all this, didn't put faith, and I have to say, it didn't put much faith in me to, growing up in the 2000s. They didn't put much faith that the people on the ground, were men of God and, people that represent God. Because again, as the old saying goes, there's only one God. The people on the earth are only here to spread the word of God. But there's only one God, and there's only one person who can fundamentally say what is right and what is wrong. And that's the man above. Now, I'm sure everybody will agree with that, because, no priest can say what's wrong and what's right until God says. The Bible nowadays, it's even strange to see. It's strange. It's a strange time we live in this country. Again, I always talk about this, but a league of Dublin and dog shit. That's basically on the straight. We see this on our streets, in our towns, in our villages. Back years ago, people had a bit more decency. People had the respect to lift up after dog. People had the respect not to league it up litter. Because they took pride. They took pride in their communities. They took pride in their country. They took pride in everything that was Irish. Nowadays, some young people don't take. They don't take, and that's the thing. They don't take about the effort, the community effort. Like for example, towns in Cavan. There's 3 or 4 towns in Cavan that were tiny towns for the longest time, nearly in the country. And young people, I really appeal to young people because it's not their fault at the end of the day. Because when I was growing up, you were taught not to litter. You were taught to dispose of rubbish. Not to throw rubbish, whatever. If you had a sweep wrap or anything, to find a bin. And I even remember when I was walking, when I was a child, I would go for walks, small bit of walks, and when I was about 6 or 7. And I used to bring a drink with me, and I used to have a bottle, 3 or 4 bottles with me, in a backpack. I used to have a few sweeties with me. And again, I didn't throw them. I could have threw them into the shock and said, "Oh, not mine." I didn't do that because when I was brought up, I was told, always put your litter into the bins. Always always do things right. And simple as that. Always do things right. Always respect the people that have to go up and clean up after you. And that's something nowadays, people don't think about. That somebody has to clean up after everybody. No matter how much of a mess it is. No matter if it's 3 pieces of litter or 16 bags. People have to clean up after them. And again, it's about the respect. You don't, like some people I have encountered over my life. They just like they live right beside these places, and they just fuck rubbish behind their houses. And and these people have children and everything, and you wonder to yourself, what kind of an example they're giving to their children, to the young children of their family, and what kind of example they're giving to the community, just not caring, just fucking it behind their house. They're not really, again, years ago, they would have been killed. Nearly in this country, if any community around here, I know for Cavan, you would have been named and shamed. There was one person back in the 80s who dumped rubbish on one road. He was caught and he was named and shamed. He lost his job. He had to move out of Cavan because people shamed him to hell. Shamed him to hell. Like he was shamed to hell and to back for what he done. And that was the right way. He was fine too, but that was the right way of doing it because he really suffered. He really suffered. And every time people want to hear mention his name, I'm sure a lot of older people would remember him. Would say, he was only a fucking bollock. And that's as simple as that. That's all they would say about him. This probably man's still alive now, and if he ever comes around Cavan, he probably called a fucking bollock, so anybody remembers him. So yeah, again, this is the thing. That he had to pay for his action. He had to redeem for his action. And, again, nowadays, half of the fines in this country still go not paid. Again, that person was, basically forced to move, because of community pressure, because of the pressure the community put on him. And again, that's the right way, because the communities, you need to have respect for your community. You need to have respect for, the local environment around you. Like these people, they just don't care. It's simple as that. They just don't care for them. They don't care for themselves above all else. They don't care for themselves. Because, they have to grow up in that community. They have to do everything in that community. They have to, go to the shops in that local community. They have to go to the local butchers. They have to go to school in that local community. Their children have to go to school in that local community. And to do it, you're just wondering why. And that's the question, I'm pondering to myself now about everything that I've discussed here. Is why? Why is this change happened? I'm not as old. I'm not old. I'm not that old. I claim to be. I'm not as old as I claim to be. But yeah, it's a big change. Like everything I discussed there's many more things we could discuss. But yeah, let me know what you think. I don't know, I probably meant to mention 100 more things, but, we're out of time, unfortunately. So yeah, thank you for watching. Subscribe. Never mind. Subscribe for more and bye.